It's almost like it's a badge of honor to say that you love yourself. Like we all know it's a good thing to do. So, or for me anyway, initially I think I just took on this banner and put it in my mind of like, yes, I love myself, as though the thought itself was actually loving myself. But it's not. Love is not a thought. Yeah. For me anyway, I'm on the non-dual path, not because non-duality is right, but because I discovered that that's how you talk about truth in a way that's most pointing to what I actually see as truth. So if you're not on that path, warmly welcome to stay anyway. This is not me preaching a metaphysical model on you. I'm just explaining where I come from, or where my philosophy arises from. So from a non-dual perspective, everything is one. We share our being with everything and everyone, and our being is the fabric that makes up all of the universe. And that can be realized with the mind as a thought. It's like an intellectual understanding. That the way that unity feels in the body is as the absence of separation. There is no clear boundaries between this and that, between that and that. It's more like a unity. And the way unity is experienced is through love. Non-duality or oneness realized in the body is love, is the flowing of love. I cannot repeat this many times enough, because for me, something flipped when I realized that love is not something that comes and goes. It is the fabric of the universe. Oneness, when experienced from our bodies or from our visceral system, from our nervous system, whatever that's made up of, the thing we point to when we say nervous system and body. So loving ourselves then, that is feeling that there is no separation within me. And the first step to even allow that to flow, to allow myself to experience that there is no separation, it could be a thought. So I'm not rejecting thought as a tool for realization, for self-realization. But it's not the end goal to think that I love myself. For me anyway, the end goal is to live truth. So it's not even an end goal to start to love myself. This is something I was misunderstanding, I think, or like interpreting it wrongly, that loving yourself is about starting to love yourself. It is doing something that you didn't used to do. It becomes an effort. But if love is the fabric of the universe, it doesn't need to be created. It needs to be unveiled. You have to see through an illusion of separation that right now is clouding love, the sense of unity. So loving yourself is not about starting to love yourself. It's about removing beliefs that isn't actually true. Yeah? Did I convey that? Loving yourself is something you already do. If it doesn't feel like that right now, it's because something is in the way. And that we can be curious about. We can explore it. We can see what kind of anchors does it have in me. But it's a removing process. It's not a forcing something new to occur. It's removing debris. that's in the way of love. We already love ourselves. Notice what comes up in you when I say that. Is there a nodding agreement that yes, this is true? Or is there a resistance? And I'm not asking you to go against that resistance. I'm inviting you to explore it. And explore it even like, what is this resistance saying? How does it feel in my body? And what would it mean if that was true? If I already love myself, not take it on board as a new belief, but an exploration. What would I find if that was true? How different would my relationship be with myself if it wasn't about starting to love myself, but rather stop blocking love for myself? Because the journey to truth, or the spiritual path, if you want to call it that, for me anyway, isn't about learning new things, isn't about taking on new beliefs. It's about exploring. Is this true for me? Is this what my experience says? Does this make sense for me? What do I find if I follow all these pointers from people, from religious traditions, from people's experience? They're pointers. They're not new beliefs to take on. And everything I say, please don't take my word for it. Use it as a pointer and see if you find the same thing within you. Maybe you don't, actually. Maybe I haven't fully peeled away all the layers yet. Maybe we need different pointers. Self-love. Finding our way all the way back to the essence of ourselves, where we already love ourselves, where there is no separation anymore. And that also invites loving all temporal versions of ourselves, meaning that loving myself as a 5-year-old, as a 10-year-old, as a 17-year-old, as a 30-year-old. Every vision I come up with, thinking back to myself, and usually for me anyway, it's not just a thought. It's like if I think back to myself when I was 17 years old, something almost happens in my body. There becomes a certain contraction or an opening. And that version of myself, do I love her? And if I do, then sweet, yummy bathing in that. But if I don't, there is an invitation to explore. What is it about this version of myself that's creating resistance and contraction and judgment? Perhaps even shaming myself. And that can be really scary to go into if we think that where we end up isn't the loving place. But the more we explore and discover that love is our essence. So if I dig into the judgment of my teenage self, if I courageously and wholeheartedly and with curious and compassion, I will end up in love. There is nowhere else to end up in. There is no separation in the universe, so there can't be any separation between me and the idea of my 17-year-old self, who I was then, who I think about when I think about her. But it might appear as though there is separation. And this is the crucial difference. If there actually were separation, then going deeper into that will just reinforce the separation. But if there isn't separation, if we're discovered that separation is an illusion, then it's safe to go into all these ideas about separation, these seemingly separations that's alive in my nervous system, in my mind and in my body. Because I know that by the end of all of these uncomfortable emotions that's going to come up, I will end in love, in unity. There is no other way to end. There is no other place to end up. Love is the essence of all things. Love is what oneness feels like. And for me, this has been a transformative insight. And it's not a one-time discovery. It's an ongoing process, for me anyway. Like the other day, I discovered a new version of myself that wasn't time-bound. It was one of these things that, you might show up in different way in different circumstances because you've been conditioned that way. You've been... when you speak to a dog, you might not speak the same way that you speak to your accountant. If you speak to a group of people, you might speak differently than when you speak to your lover, your life partner. And can you love all the versions of yourself that show up? Or rather, not can you love, but can you see that you already love them? So for me, the invitation the other day was that I have, a long-standing fear of speaking in public, or my nervous system becomes very activated when I speak to groups of people. And it's different depending on the circumstances, of course, who the people are, what the topic is. It's getting better. When I was younger, it was more terrifying in how my every overall life is, also depends, but it's still with me. And I think initially, or hang on, let me tell you the story first. So I was asking a question in an online setting, and I could feel myself getting really nervous, but stumbling over the words. And my inner critic was going like, oh, no, not liking this. And a lot of this, I've talked about this in many videos, that isn't a problem. That the inner critic goes and says it's things is happening to the nervous system. The key thing is that, do we believe it? Do we believe that any of these things impact my value or my lovableness? Because if we don't believe that, then it's just a play of form. You can sit back in the ever-present peace, love, and just watch your nervous system unfold. Watch your thoughts come and go. But this particular instance, for me, wasn't like that. It was one of those where I believed that I showed up in a way that somehow diminished my value, or my value was at stake. So there was a belief that what was happening, the nervousness that came up, something important was at stake here. So afterwards, I had to sit with that and realize that this particular version of myself, the way I showed up in this very, the setting of this particular public question, triggered a corner of myself where I still wasn't free. There was still holding on that the way I show up in the world diminishes my value. And it's easy to shy away from those moments of going like, oh, thank God that's over. Don't ever want to think about that again. And we can, of course. But it's also an invitation to liberate us even more. No, there's an edge here where separation, it's still prevailing. You believe in separation over here. Come on, darling, let's look at it and let's feel it. Put your trust in this thing that love is what you find at the bottom. When the illusion of separation starts to crack, you will fall into love. And for me, that's true every time. And the more times I do it, the more confidence or courage, I guess you could say, I build up to go explore these places. Love all the versions of myself. The one that's nervous for public speaking. She is just as much part of unity as anything else manifested. I don't need to force love on that version. That version is already loved. If that version were to show up, look at that. Some nervousness coming up. Because when I was younger, I really wanted to get rid of my nervousness in speaking in front of people, because it really made me feel like I wasn't valuable. And my initial way of addressing this was to try and reduce the nervousness. Try to somehow work on myself so that I'm not nervous in these situations. And I'm not diminishing that. That has its place, that has its value. And you can become more confident or less nervous if you practice, if you keep showing up. The nervousness might diminish in public speaking. But we can never, or I don't think so anyway, practice our nervous system so much that there will be no scenario where I speak in public and I don't become nervous. So that's like a lifelong mission that has no end goal. Because what I'm relying on is to make sure I'm never nervous so that I don't lose my value. No, but there's a much easier path. There's a much truer path. And that is your value is never connected to how nervous you are. It's not connected to how perfectly you can address a group of people. If you decouple your value from that nervous reaction, you're already free. If your value is never dependent on how you show up, you can love those versions, or the love for that version is visible. The belief that how I show up affects my value, that is creating separation. That is what's causing suffering, not the nervousness itself. The fact that we believe, or I believed, that my value was on the line. And as I said in the beginning, one way to start exploring this is to think about it. Is this really true? How could my value be attached to how I show up? What does this mean? And what about that? And what about the third thing? And then we might come to terms with, hang on, it cannot be like that. And then there still might be a belief in the body, in our nervous systems. And then we need to sit with that. Words don't always touch those layers. It almost feels like they're a bit slower. They don't speak words the same way. They might need to be held, breathed through, allowed to expand, to feel all the feelings in that. And that's part of the realignment. That's part of the exploration. Realizing that our value is never on the stake. Love is the essence of what we are. Unity and oneness is there as a given. It's the starting point. So if it doesn't feel like love is present, there's an invitation for curiosity, for exploration. We don't need to start loving ourselves. We can just realize that we do love ourselves. Yes. I think that's what I wanted to share in this episode. If you would like a deeper dive into love, then perhaps this episode is interesting. Otherwise, I'd love to hear your reflections in the comment section, and I hope to see you next time, my friend.